Today I want to talk to you about the law of the bad apple. You can see where we're going on this law, can't you? It's law number 8 in teamwork. The law of the bad apple says, rotten attitudes ruin a team. Now, let me just stop here before I do any lecturing on this law and say to you that I know nobody in this studio is a bad apple. I mean, you're here. You wouldn't be here if you were a bad apple. And I also realize everybody that's watching this training teamwork video, you're not a bad apple. Of course not. You wouldn't be in the training if you were a bad apple. But let me ask you a question. You in the studio, you that watch the video, let me ask you a question. How many of you know someone that's a bad apple? How many of you are seated beside that person right now? Don't go there. Don't go there. Some of you ruined your whole day right there. Let's talk about this bad apple that basically, because of a bad attitude, ruins the whole team. I wrote a book in 1985 called The Winning Attitude, and in the top section of this law, I tried in that book to define an attitude, and let me just take you through it now. What is an attitude? It is the advanced man of our true selves. Its roots are inward, but its fruit is outward. It's our best friend or our worst enemy. It is more honest and more consistent than our words. It is an outward look based upon past experiences. It is the thing which draws people to us or repels them. And it is never content until it is expressed. It's the librarian of our past, it's the speaker of our present, and it's the prophet of our future. That's what an attitude is. It's an outward expression of an inward feeling. When I'm speaking in religious circles sometimes, I define attitude this way. I tell people, your attitude is the John the Baptist of your life. It goes before you saying, he is coming. He is coming. Isn't that true? Can't you spot a bad attitude before the person ever says anything? I mean, haven't you just seen people, and they're walking towards you maybe on the street, and you say, oh my goodness. Huh? Haven't you been on an elevator, somebody gets on the elevator, and you go, oh, thank God I'm not going home with them. Now, on the team, what I have found is, you show me a bad apple. You show me a person has a bad attitude, and it will begin to spoil the rest of the team. In fact, just for fun, I brought with me today some real resume and cover letter excerpts taken from real resumes and cover letters printed in Fortune magazine. Okay? I mean, these are real resumes. These are real cover letters of people who want jobs. And you talk about bad apples. Listen to this. Here, I'll just read a few of them. Reason for leaving last job? Maturity leave. Don't you know some people you want to give them maturity leave? Come back in a couple years, you need a maturity leave. Here's another person who said, I am wholly responsible for 2 failed financial institutions. My middle name's bankrupt. Here's another person who said, it's best for employers that I do not work with people. Now there's somebody you want to hire, isn't it, huh? Yeah. Put them in a corner, build a wall around them. Here's another one. I failed the bar exams with relatively high grades. Here's another one. Note, please don't misconstrue my 14 jobs as job hopping. I have never quit a job. Oh, There's a bad apple. Whoa, I've never quit a job. Hello? Reason for leaving last job. They insisted that all employees get to work by 8:45 a.m. every morning. I could not work under those conditions. I love this one. The company made me a scapegoat, just like my previous employers. One more. The person was asked for references, and they put in their form, none. I've left a path of destruction behind me. Kind of says it all, doesn't it? Huh? Just kind of says it all. Now, let's talk about this bad apple attitude on the team that hurts the rest of the team members. Let me give you 4 attitude thoughts. Okay, here we go. Number 1, your attitude is a choice. Let's start there. And the reason I want to start there with your attitude is a choice is because I've taught on attitude for quite a while now, since I wrote a book back in 1985 on it. And I just want you to know, I run into adults all the time who somehow think that the attitude they have was given to them. They'll look and they'll say, well, yeah, I may have a bad attitude, but you don't realize who my parents were. You know, I wasn't toilet trained at the right age. Or I grew up in a bad environment, or I didn't get this, or I didn't have this. And they're wanting to blame everybody else for the attitude they have. Now listen to me very carefully. The attitude you have right now, let me tell you something about that attitude. Whether it's good or bad, whether you're a bad apple or good apple or no apple, let me tell you something about your attitude. You chose it. That's why I don't feel sorry for people who have bad attitudes. I don't go out of my way to try to help people with bad attitudes and come over to them and say, oh, Missy, I'm so sorry you're feeling bad, and oh, I wish it were better for you, and oh, let's just hold hands and sing Kumbaya. No, Missy, if you've got a bad attitude, let me tell you something. Get a good one. It's a choice. And to be honest with you, Missy, until you get a good one, do me a favor. Don't come around. Help us all. Leave. Yeah. Because I watch teams all the time try to pump up people with bad attitudes. I'm telling you right now, you don't need to be pumped out. If you've got a bad attitude, you need to be shipped out. Because it's a choice. The reason I don't feel sorry for people who have bad attitudes is you chose your lousy, stinking attitude. And can I tell you something? Until you fix it, don't come around. Just a thought. My wife Margaret and I, many years ago, were doing a conference. We had about 400 in the conference, husbands and wives, doing a little bit of stuff on marriage. And we were in a question and answer period. And I'll never forget this one lady. She raised up her hand and she looked at Margaret, addressing the question to Margaret. And she said to Margaret, she said, does John make you happy as your husband? Now, when she asked the question, do I make Margaret happy? I thought, oh, I'm so glad she asked that question because I happen to think I'm a good husband. So I was very excited for Margaret to answer her. Until she answered her. Because when Margaret was asked the question, does John make you happy? She looked right at this lady. I mean, I'm talking about, she didn't even hesitate. She didn't even think. She looked at her and she says, no, he doesn't make me happy. Now, get the picture. This is my conference. And I'm looking at Margaret, and immediately, I mean, people are stunned with what she's, he doesn't make me happy. And so I look at Margaret and I said, honey, I said, explain to them what you mean by that fact, that I don't make you happy. Have you ever asked somebody to explain something, and they did, and when they did, you wish you wouldn't have asked them to explain something? That's exactly what happened, because when I asked her, I said, well, explain what you mean, Margaret. Margaret said, well, okay, I'll explain. She said, she looks right back at this lady, and she says, in the first 6 months of our marriage, I realized John would never make me happy. Now, I don't know if you have the gift of discernment. But we're going downhill rather rapidly here. And then she said, thank God she said this, because she said, for the first 6 months, that's exactly what I expected, for him to make me happy. She said he had this little church and he worked hard all day, and I was teaching kindergarten, and I'd come home from teaching kindergarten and I'd be tired and he'd be tired. She said, I found out real quickly that my goal was not to wait on him to make me happy. And then she said something that was so powerful. She said, I realized 6 months into my marriage, the only person that can make me happy is me. And she said, when I took responsibility for my own happiness, she said, John has made my happiness even greater. Which I'm saying, whew. That was close. What Margaret was saying is, I'm responsible for my attitude. Not my husband, not my wife, not my boss, not the other team players. I'm responsible. Grow up. Get a life. It's a choice. Every once in a while I run into people that say, they're kind of grumpy and say, what happened to you? Well, I got out on the wrong side of the bed. I wish it were that easy. If it were, I'd send you home. I'd say, go to your bedroom. Jump on your bed and roll out the right side of that sucker. Your attitude is a choice. The second attitude thought is that an attitude compounds when exposed to others. It compounds. Attitudes never stay with a person who has it. They're contagious. They spread. They multiply. You can't stamp them out. Attitude thought number 3. Bad attitudes compound faster than good ones. Isn't that true? You work hard to get a good attitude going. Bad attitudes carry their own weight. Huh? You say, what in the world happened to the team? Bad attitude got out. Began to compound. And number 4, attitudes have the power to lift up or tear down a team. In fact, here's the way this works. Great abilities plus rotten attitudes equal a bad team. Great abilities plus bad attitudes equal an average team. Great abilities plus an average attitude equals a good team. Only great abilities plus good attitudes equal a great team. Many teams are not successful because of an attitude issue. Not an ability issue. Not a fact that they can't do something. It's an attitude issue. For most teams, I would say to you, you're only an attitude away from success. Just an attitude. It's not, can we get somebody more skilled? Oftentimes it's not, can we find somebody with greater ability? To be honest with you, many times it's, can we just change an attitude? Let me tell you, because I love this story. It's one of my favorite stories, but it's a great attitude story. It's about a salesman who went to this barber who was always negative. Now, first of all, let me stop here for a moment. How many of you know somebody, they're just always negative? You with me? Okay. Just think for a moment. We won't dwell long here because this is depressing. Picture them in your mind right now. Think of the feeling it brings you. I mean, haven't you all had one of these Excedrin headache days where you wake up in the morning and you just know it's not going to be a good day, and haven't you just laid flat on your back and looked up at the ceiling and said, Dear God, help me not to see so-and-so today. And then your spouse walks in the room anyway. But anyway. Just kidding. Here comes the salesman to this negative attitude barber that he's got. So he's cutting his hair, and so he asked the salesman, what's up? And the salesman said, well, I'm excited. He said, I'm going to Rome, he said, tomorrow. And the barber said, well, he said, what are you going to Rome for? He said, well, I've got this sales presentation in Rome I'm all excited about. And the barber quits cutting his hair and he says, look, he said, first of all, he said, you don't want to go to Rome. He said, have you ever flown overseas? It's a hassle. He says, first of all, he said, I'm here to tell you, you won't land on time. Planes are always late. He said, not only that, he said, the food's not good on the plane. He said, where are you going to stay when you're over in Rome? And the guy told him, and the barber said, oh, not that place. Oh, my goodness. He said, I was stationed in Rome for a while. He said, that's a horrible hotel. He said, of all the places you don't want to. He said, you'll be lucky to get towels at that hotel. He said, what are you going to do? He said, well, I'm going to do a sales presentation. Oh, he said, you don't want to do a sales presentation. He said, Italians, they talk all day. They never make decisions. You don't want to do that. Well, obviously, the salesman's just getting discouraged with the barber. So he says something about the Pope under his breath, and the barber said, what'd you say about the Pope? Oh, he said, well, I was kind of hoping while I was over there to have an audience with the Pope. Well, now the barber, he's shutting everything down. He says, this is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. He said, popes don't see people like you. Popes see kings and popes see presidents. But he said, the Pope is never going to see you. He said, this is the dumbest thing you've ever done. A month later, the salesman's back in the barber's chair. Barber says, how was your trip? Oh, the salesman said, greatest trip I've ever had. He said, you remember you told me that I shouldn't go over there? Well, yeah, I don't think you should go. He said, that plane was incredible. He said, we left JFK Airport just on time. He said, the food, best I've ever had. Slept like a baby. He said, the wheels of my plane landed, hit the runway exactly on time, perfect flight, great food, got in a taxi, went to that hotel you said I shouldn't stay at. He said, I was blown away. He said, when I got out of the taxi, there the people of the hotel were standing out in front of that hotel to greet me with towels in their hands. Said I had a balcony overlooking the Vatican. He said it was the greatest place I've ever stayed in my life. Well, this is staggering the barber, who's not used to good news and can't handle good news. And he said the greatest thing about the whole trip is I got to see the Pope. Now the barber, he's just stopped and everything. He's right in front of the guy. He said, what do you mean you got to see the Pope? He said, I've never met anybody that's seen the Pope. I've never talked to anybody that's seen the Pope. He said, I never thought you'd get to see the Pope. He said, that's for presidents and kings. He said, you mean you saw the Pope? Yeah, I saw the Pope. What did he say to you? He said, they brought me into this incredible room. It was ornate. I never saw so much art. I never saw so much gold in my life. He said there was a runner, a path towards the Pope clear at the other end of the room. And I looked way down there and I saw him standing there, and he said, it just humbled me. And he said, I just kind of bowed my head and I humbly walked across the room and head bowed. And I finally got to where he was and I fell at his feet and I kneeled there, and he put out his hand. And he says, my child, my child. Where did you ever get such a lousy haircut? It says it all, doesn't it, huh? It says it all about our attitude and how we look at life. And all I want you to realize is the law of the bad apple says that a rotten attitude will ruin a team. And everybody knows you don't need a barber, not a negative one, on your team.